Up with KREM begins now.
7 a.m. now on our Tuesday morning. Black Lives Matter protests continue around the nation more than 1 week now after the death of George Floyd. This morning, we'll take a look at how Spokane is recovering following a violent protest Sunday. And do you travel across the East Trent Bridge during your daily commute? Starting today, drivers will need to take a different route. This morning, we begin with new information on the search for a missing toddler in Central Washington. Police say 3-year-old Melody Lopez's father is no longer a suspect. Overnight, police issued an Amber Alert for the little girl. Initially, they believed she was with her father, but this morning, that investigation shifted. Now, it is still unclear where they think the girl might be now. Melody was last seen wearing a white and red striped shirt and gray leggings. Anyone with information on her whereabouts is urged to call the Wapato Police Department at the number on your screen. 7:01 now. Welcome to Up with KREM. I'm Jen York, joined by my colleagues Evan Arani and Dana Marie McNichol. Of course, we'll get to more on what they're covering this morning, including our forecast. But first, we do want to begin with a live look over downtown Spokane. Pretty quiet this morning in Riverfront Park. Of course, last night it was a different scene. Authorities say at least 70 people gathered last night at the Red Wagon. City leaders issued the curfew, a citywide curfew, after demonstrators became aggressive towards police and motorists. By midnight, though, our crews reported most of that group had dispersed. For the second straight night, Mayor Nadine Woodward set a curfew again for downtown Spokane. It started last night at 8:15 and ended at 5 a.m. And it covered the downtown core from Division east to Maple and 5th north to Boone.
We are following a situation in Riverfront Park by the Red Wagon, where it has been going on now for several hours. A group of unruly people, about the size of 70 people, and fighting amongst themselves, throwing rocks at cars going nearby on Spokane Falls Boulevard. And so our response.
Well, reminder that curfew lifted at 5 a.m. and there's no word yet if the curfew will be reinstated tonight. Now, this morning, we do want to get a better look at the downtown area from the ground and if there's any damage from last night's demonstration. For more on that, we want to bring in Nicole Hernandez joining us live. Nicole, what are you seeing this morning?
Yeah, Jen, so right now we are at the Rid Path building right on Stevenson First, and I want to give you, you can see kind of that remnants of the graffiti that we saw here. We've got some green here, we've got some white wiped up here, and this building was really hit quite hard here on this side and on the other side of the wall. There was graffiti all over the windows also, and as we walk down, you can see that graffiti is all completely gone. Now that is thanks to a lot of community members that helped out, came out and scrubbed up that graffiti. A lot of people were also picking up trash off the ground. A lot of these streets were littered with trash here yesterday, but this morning Spokane is looking very clean. Now the only difference here is that a lot of the businesses are still boarded up. There's not any right directly in our area here, but mainly on Main Street and a couple streets south of Main Street. There are several businesses that decided to keep boards up in case protests or violence happen again in the future in the next week. So those boards are still up, but in general, Spokane's looking much better than it was yesterday. Less graffiti, less trash, and there's a lot less police presence yesterday. We saw groups of National Guard and Spokane Sheriff's deputies walking around, and that's not what we're seeing this morning. Jen, I'll send things back to you.
All right, Nicole. Yeah, we were both downtown yesterday. Quite the different scene for Spokane. I mean, seeing groups of National Guard members patrolling downtown and so many different police agencies downtown as well.
Yeah, it was quite the sight, but it was also a cool sight to see as many community members as did come down to help clean up and make it look actually really well this morning.
Yeah, so many people came down. They asked not to be on camera yesterday, but there were so many volunteers who just wanted to do their part and clean up downtown Spokane. All right, Nicole, thank you so much. So yesterday, when we're talking about seeing the graffiti and the debris downtown, this is what it looked like. It was left over from a violent protest late Sunday. And as Nicole mentioned, we saw a lot of graffiti splashed on buildings and several shattered storefronts. Now, authorities say a group of agitators created the chaos Sunday following a peaceful protest on the death of George Floyd. Spokane County Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich says Antifa is to blame. Meanwhile, Spokane Police Chief Craig Meidel says militias and Proud Boys groups were part of the disruption. However, Sheriff Knezovich says the Proud Boys group did not cause damage and that militia members left when asked to do so. Protesters also gathered in Coeur d'Alene for a peaceful Black Lives Matter demonstration. Protesters gathered yesterday near the Winco and Cracker Barrel. KREM 2 crews witnessed several people carrying weapons. They told our crews they were there to keep the peace. At least one business, Clark's Diamond Jewelers, boarded up its windows and doors as a precaution. And in Western Washington, Seattle police are now calling a demonstration on Capitol Hill a riot. Last night, officers report the crowd threw rocks, bottles, and fireworks at officers. Now, these protests initially started peaceful. However, authorities say a small group of people escalated the situation on Capitol Hill. It is estimated looters caused millions of dollars in damage to Seattle in the past 4 days. And protests continue at the nation's capital overnight. The president drew outrage from some groups for using military police to push demonstrators away from the White House. They used tear gas to disperse the groups of peaceful crowds. He ordered the move so he could visit St. John's Church, which suffered damage during a protest Sunday. He is also drawing criticism this morning after vowing to send military into states that refuse to call on their National Guard for help. Dana Marie McNichol is now joining us with more.
Good morning, Jen. I'm here to tell you about what's trending this morning. The president is threatening to deploy active troops to states with violent protests, and we want to know if you agree with him. Head to the KREM 2 app to vote now in our live poll. 64% of you are saying yes. You agree that the president wants to send active military to states that have violent protests. Following the president's announcement, 200 military police soldiers from Fort Bragg were moved to the D.C. area and are ready to enter if needed.
Today I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
City and state leaders across the country have called the threat unconstitutional. There was actually laws preventing the president from using military force on citizens, like martial law. There's also the Civil War era Posse Comitatus Act. This prohibits military from acting as law enforcement. They can't make arrests, search people, or seize property. However, there is a loophole. In extreme cases, the president can invoke the Insurrection Act. This would allow the president to use active duty military or the National Guard to act as additional law enforcement. The president can use the Insurrection Act with or without a governor's request. You probably remember the last time the president took similar action. The Insurrection Act was used most recently during the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles back in 1992. At the time, protests erupted after charges were dropped against 4 officers who were brutally attacked an unarmed black man named Rodney King. The governor at the time did request military assistance from the president. George H.W. Bush used the Insurrection Act to help send additional help. Now, almost 3 decades later, the president is interested in taking similar action. So this morning, we're asking you to weigh in to our live poll during the show. Do you agree with the president that troops should be deployed to states with violent protests? 65% of you this morning are saying yes. Almost 300 of you have voted this morning, and we appreciate those who have given your opinions and have joined our conversation. You still have time to do so throughout the rest of the show. It is 7:08 now. I'll send it over to you, Jen.
All right, Dana Marie, thank you. Well, Washington State's coronavirus testing efforts are getting stronger. Yesterday, crews shipped the first wave of testing supplies, and it's all part of the state's plan for a widespread testing in long-term care facilities. All staff and residents in nursing homes will be tested, and testing in those facilities will be required by the end of the month. 6 people at Summerwood Alzheimer's Special Care Center in Moses Lake tested positive for COVID-19. 1 person is hospitalized, but no deaths are reported in connection to the outbreak. Last weekend, experts tested the staff and the residents, and those patients are now in isolation. The care center anticipates the remainder of the test results to come out within the next few days. Starting next Monday, all workers from grocery stores to small businesses will be required to wear a face mask. Only those working a job where they have no contact with other people are exempt. Employers will be required to provide all the necessary materials for employees, and customers must also follow retailers' posted signage for facial coverings. 7:10 now. This weekend, a tropical depression is expected to move into the Gulf of Mexico. And now would be the time for people to prepare. But there are some extra hurdles this year due to the pandemic. Let's connect the dots.
Hurricane season is officially underway, and this year could bring challenges we haven't seen before. Let's connect the dots. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration predicts this will be a busy hurricane season, with as many as 19 named storms, 10 of which could become hurricanes. That doesn't mean we'll definitely get that many storms, but it's a reminder to be prepared for a busy hurricane season. But as we do that, there's another problem: the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, and that presents its own set of challenges. Local and state governments are already strained as they respond to the COVID-19 crisis. Questions remain about how to maintain social distancing in shelters, and even if people will evacuate when ordered. The other concern is disaster fatigue. This has been a tough year, and the months of stress have taken a toll. People may not want to hear any more warnings about impending disaster from officials, but organizations are doing their best to adjust. The Red Cross says they're investing in laptops and wireless hotspots to better assist people virtually. And instead of focusing on massive shelters, they're turning their attention to individual hotel rooms. It's a long list of challenges in what's already been a challenging year.
Yeah, I think that puts it mildly. 2020, we've paid our dues. I don't think we can handle much more any natural disasters. So, Evan, hopefully things are going to be looking calm, at least in our neck of the woods.
Yeah, we're hoping that this depression doesn't last as anything further than that. Hour by hour here in our neck of the woods, we at least are experiencing the dry weather after a very wet month of May. Now we're looking at dry skies for about the remainder of your work week. It's not until about Friday into Saturday that we start to see some showers develop. One of the views that we have consistently been looking out at, 49 degrees north. Look at this. I know a lot of our skiers and snowboarders were not happy with the early closure at a lot of our area ski resorts, but we have now pretty much entered meteorological summer. The summer solstice comes in about 3 weeks, and we've seen most of that snow melt off and plenty of green across those mountaintops. Wind gusts are going to be increasing to the 20-mile-per-hour range as the day goes on. That means expect it to be breezy at times, especially through the evening, but it will not be posing any real risk to people. It's not going to be really windy, just a little bit of a breeze if you're a walker or a jogger. So something to keep in mind. And coming up in just a bit, we'll be talking more about what's in store for our work week. We are expecting some showers to come our way as we head toward your Friday and Saturday, so details on that are in just a few minutes. But for now, it's 7:13. Jen, back over to you.
Well, your newsfeed is likely filled with pictures and videos surrounding a week's worth of protests nationwide. But before you click share, you should know that there is a lot of misinformation being shared on social media. In the next 10 minutes, we will show you the fake posts with the most shares that you've probably seen on your feed.